Let's continue refactoring Futurecam. Let's look at some pending changes we have already made before I started recording this video. Okay, this is a helpful comment. This can be staged, as can this. And this. So basically this comment just says why we observe the will resign active notification, and that we could instead observe the entering background notification, and why we don't. So again, you should document what the alternative is and why you didn't use it. Here I have removed this else with a verification failure because this complicates the code more than it helps. Unnecessary branching breaks the flow of code and makes it hard to read. Like, it's fine to put a verify like here because this is still straight line code, but you don't want a branch just for a verification or an assertion. And there's a to do which we don't need to obsess about. This can be, I think there's a GitHub task for this. Oops. No, there isn't. So this is needed. Okay. But we'll put it here. It's more convenient. Either works. Just track it someplace so that you don't forget. Since there is no other change, we can discard this. Yeah, this is a different change. Let's not shove it in. No code change. Okay, what else can we do? Yeah, we need to think about some of these. So I think we have a task for this. Can the session call start running by itself? So we'll do that later on. Here we are just changing the order. First we are configuring the device. Let's not do this in the same commit. Let this commit be only about changing the order. Like, this is necessary to do because what begin configuration and commit configuration do is they ensure that the changes are applied atomically, removing the old input and adding the new one. Actually, this is a safe change. We can go ahead with this. But there was something else we planned which may cause us to revisit. Are the callers calling it, and should they? So yeah, let me again go back on what I said. If you are unsure, undo the change, like minimize the diffs. Don't make unnecessary diffs and then revert them. Now are the diffs better? The to do is the same. First we are configuring the device, then we are adding it to the session. This code has been moved down, that's it. And helpful comments have been added saying first we are going to do this, now we are going to do this. This is a good change. What's happening here? Okay, comment has been rewritten and we are removing it, removing the conflicting photo output. Cool. So two changes here. What's going on here? Yeah, this is an unrelated change. Set camera to match UI. Does this? Okay, we'll forget about that. Again, there are too many things going on. Let's just stage this. Things that are staged there don't stage here. Okay. Update better session dot swift. Remove photo output when adding video data output, otherwise it will crash. These helpful comments make a difference to people who don't understand all the details of the camera APIs in iOS, like me when I started this project. So this is one thing. First configure the device and only then the session. Okay. Push. Okay, this is good. Let's see what else we can do. Yeah, in order to do this, you don't need to do this because you are not modifying the session. The video data output is attached to the session and it is being modified, but not the session itself. So we don't need this for this or this. We may need it for this. Let's see. Let me first close all these tabs. There are too many that have accumulated, as always. Yeah, let's do this later because we have a task for it. Let's pick something else to work on. Let's pick this. This is straightforward. So the thing is, when you have an optional double, the function has to handle yet another case. And if you look at this, this function takes a bunch of parameters which are optional. In some cases, they are nil if there is no value. In some cases, it's -1 if there is no value. This is inconsistent. You should use only nil everywhere or only -1 everywhere. And if you have a function like this, func do something, and it takes a parameter, whatever value double, right? Suppose this has to be positive for this reason. Let's call it a duration. It's the duration of a video recording. Obviously, you can't record a video for -3 seconds, so it has to be positive. Now, let's say sometimes the video is not recorded, an error occurred or whatever, or the user stopped the recording even before it could start, in which case the duration will not be present. Now, how do you handle it? If you handle it this way, you will do something like guard duration greater than 0, else somehow handle it. Return. This is how you would do it, right? Suppose you use an optional value like this. You would do guard let duration equal to duration, else do something and return. Now, which style should we use? Firstly, we should use one of the two. Which one you use is less important than the fact that you pick one and use it consistently. Here we have used both in the same function, which is bad. So we will fix this anyway in this commit. So we can fix it by using this style consistently or this style consistently. One advantage of this, or so it is claimed, is that the Swift compiler will verify that you have taken care of this case. But someone can still invoke this with a negative value. You can't prevent them, because the compiler cannot check for that. There is no unsigned double data type. Ideally, if there was, we would use it, but there isn't. So here effectively you have to handle three cases: nil, -1 or negative, and positive. Here you have to handle only two cases, positive and negative. And since a double already gives you a way to represent a missing value, you don't need this. So let's use this consistently. Again, this is a judgment call. You could disagree with me, that's okay. Deviation is -1. This is the movement in the phone while the recording is going on, using the accelerometer and gyroscope. So this is in degrees. Again, you can't move the phone by -1 degrees, right? So -1 is a valid value. You can't use this technique when -1 is so in this case -1 is an invalid value, so you can use it to indicate that the value is missing. If negative values were valid, then you can't use it. For example, if you have a bank and you're modeling the transactions, and each transaction has a number, and if it's positive if it's a deposit, negative if it's a withdrawal, in that case you can't use -1 to model that the transaction is invalid. There maybe you can use 0, right? So you have to find an illegal value and use that to model missing values. Okay. So now show tripod hint and show light trail blah blah should be fixed. So here if it is -1 anyway, this second condition will fail. So actually the code is becoming simpler by handling one fewer case here. This is why static typing sometimes helps, sometimes doesn't. It's a tool. It doesn't always help, it doesn't always hurt. Duration greater than 0. Oh, we are not using deviation here. Strange. Okay, we'll evaluate after we are done. Oh, we are not using deviation here as well. Yeah, to determine if a light trail was captured in daytime, we don't need to know how many degrees the phone moved. The frame duration is what you need, and the mode, because this is only in the light trail mode, so you can remove the deviation. Duration. Okay. So this says if it is nil, substitute it with 0. You can remove that because anyway negative values will be less than this. Show required time lapse hints. Which one do we use here? We again don't care about deviation. Huh? I think we have mindlessly passed some parameters around. Duration, that's it. So now let's fix the callers of all of these. Show required time lapse hints. Doesn't take a deviation, and neither does this. Show required, wait, show required light trail hints handles duration. Does it handle deviation? No, it doesn't. Show required time lapse hints also takes a duration. Okay. Show required light trail takes a duration and a frame duration. Takes a duration and a frame duration. Show required time lapse takes a duration only. And these are all non-optional, and so are these. And you don't need guardlet duration equal to duration. It has to be greater than 0 to indicate it's valid. A 0-second time lapse is not a valid time lapse. And this again checks this. Okay, cool. Now the other thing we need to think about is show tripod hint. It is given 3 parameters: deviation, mode, and okay, fine. This is taken care of. Then we need to update this. Frame duration and mode, no deviation. One more thing we should think about is the frame duration. Here we are checking that it is greater than 0. Show required light trail hints. We don't care about the frame duration here. Okay. Wait. There should be one more function about daytime. Show light trail captured at daytime hint. Where is that being called? Oh, it's being called here. which is itself bad because this should go within this. Like, why are you checking repeatedly? So we'll just put a to do. We don't want to refactor it some more here because this function should handle it. Show required light trail hints should call show light trail captured at daytime hint, since the latter is a special case of the former. Okay. But still, if you look at this function, the only thing it needs to know is whether it's day or night. It doesn't need to know how long the recording happened. Oh, and it's not given that. Okay, fine, never mind. I thought there was a function that was being given an additional argument. Oh, I think it's this one. Okay, never mind. Because we have this to do, we are good. Okay, time to look at the diffs. These are all minus ones. Show light trail captured at daytime. Yeah, so basically a video is a sequence of frames and each frame has a duration. So if you're capturing, I don't know, 24 frames a second, each frame duration is max 1 by 24 seconds, right? Otherwise 24 of them won't fit in a second. But it could be less than that. It could be 1 by 100 seconds if it is very bright, or 1 by 1000 seconds. So we use the frame duration to detect if it is daytime or not, because in daytime, when there's lot of light, each frame doesn't take much time to capture. It can get captured in 1 by 100 or 1 by 1000 of a second. So if this is less than some value, then you know it is daytime. For that, you don't need to know how much the phone moved physically. If you're holding it, are you moving it too much? So this makes sense logically. It makes sense at the code level because this value is not being used. It also makes sense logically. So you should check both. Similarly, show required light trail hints. Yeah, let us undo this because this function will be called here. For that, wait. No, for that also we don't need the deviation. Yeah, so we can remove the deviation. And show required time lapse hints again doesn't care about the deviation. This is strange. Show tripod hint. Oh, the tripod hint is taken care of here itself because it applies to multiple modes. So the logic is some conditions apply to multiple modes, those are here, and some conditions apply to a specific mode, those are here. This is non-optional. Instead of this, you have this, which is anyway taken care of. Show required light trail hints, we don't care. Show required time lapse hints, we don't care about deviation here. Excuse me. Okay, we'll work on those. Remove optional hint manager to handle, so to handle one fewer case. Okay, now can we take care of this? Exposure duration. This logically makes sense. You can't expose a photo for 0 time. So basically in photography, the shutter opens, then you capture some light, then you close the shutter. And if it is open for 0 seconds, no light comes in and no photo is taken. So this is logical. Updated metadata. Exposure duration is not passed here. Exposure duration is -1. Here exposure duration is passed, which comes from which is non-optional anyway. Therefore, this will be non-optional, this variable, and therefore this. Okay, cool. Do we even need this x variable? Otherwise, we can inline it. Variables that are used only once like this can be a problem, because somewhere here by mistake we might use exp. This is clear enough. You get the exposure duration of 1 frame and you multiply it by the number of frames. So this is fine. Okay. Metadata tracker, you have -1. Again, you have eliminated the variable shadowing problem. Here it's -1. You don't need to, because it has a default value. That was what we changed here, right? Where did that go? Here. It's kind of odd to pass -1 explicitly. Long exposure mode. You're inlining this. No, this should be the name, because that's what you use. And there is no exp here. So this is good. So you can see how we are making a series of changes. These 3 files are regarding metadata tracker. You don't want to combine changes to 3 files from metadata tracker to changes to a couple of files from hint manager, because that's like too many things, right? You shouldn't have 8 files in one commit where the first set of 5 constitute one logical change and the remaining 3 constitute one logical change, because then you have stuffed 2 things into one commit. Everything in a commit should be related, just as everything in a class should be related. Okay, now that we are done, playback duration. There's no multi-time lapse anymore. Who is calling the modes playback duration? Wait, is it not used at all? Oh, it's used here. Okay, and it's used here. Okay. The main controller doesn't seem to access it. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's passed here, which is, oh, bad indentation. Oops. Oh, so we need to make sure all of these are non-optional. Deviation as double -1, similar to this. Frame duration, where does it come from? Okay, it comes from here. Where does duration come from? It comes from here, which is negative, so it works. So I mean, this should not have been split. This is logically related to the previous commit, and in fact it won't compile, so that's a mistake here. Let's use -1. Duration, this is deviation. Where does duration come from? Okay, never mind. This should be -1. Okay. Oops. Yes. Let's look at the diffs. We have made this return -1. We have replaced the nil with -1. Here we have replaced 0 with -1. Here again we have replaced nil with -1. Okay. Remove all optional floating point, and float is different from floating point. Floating point includes both float and double. All optional floating. One more thing I should check for this one. This one should be taken care of. Why on earth would someone write this? Maybe they have a valid reason. Let me read it. Okay, the first time we assign it, and I still don't understand why, because it's anyway a var, so you could assign it to -1, and first time you assign it, only then you read it, so it should work. Okay. So basically these are all the ways in which you can have optional data types in Swift, optional floating point types, float, double, and CG float. But when you search for float, CG float matches in the search, so we don't need to worry about that. This is one, these are two, these are two more, and we have taken care of all four. Remove all optional floating point data types. Let's be explicit so that the reader doesn't get a confusion. Double question mark, float exclamation, CG float exclamation, double exclamation from the code. And I'll see you in the next video.